So we're going to jump this character 2 more levels, and we're going to take this sorcerer to level 5. This is going to provide us our first ability score improvement. Now we could choose either charisma or strength here as a reasonable choice, but I do think strength pays off more because we are really counting on those primary attacks hitting. As we go up in levels, things like spiritual weapon are going to come up less and less, but just hitting with that booming blade or that green flame blade is so important. That's where all our damage is coming from. So increasing our strength twice gives us a strength of 18. It's also reasonable at this point if you want to use a shield and a weapon, especially if you get something like a magical shield and it's too good to pass up. Warcaster might be an option instead. We get an additional cantrip at this level. I'm going to recommend Ray of Frost. Sometimes we're just going to be too far to hit somebody in melee. Ray of Frost at least gives us an option to do something, and that something also involves slowing down our enemies if they're moving away from us. That can have other advantages as well. But here's the big deal. We are now going to get 3rd level spells, and we're going to get 2 options, and I think these are reasonably obvious options. The first one I'm going to take is Fireball. I often talk about how Fireball is overrated, but it's still a good spell. And if you're playing a character, especially one that doesn't have a lot of ranged options, being able to cast a spell at extreme range that is going to hit lots of enemies for decent damage, when you're a character whose job it is to do as much damage as possible, Fireball is actually a really obvious choice. And the second is Spirit Guardians. Spirit Guardians is perfect for us. We can quicken this spell, which means now we can go into melee. We can hit somebody with a booming blade or a green flame blade. Then we can quicken a Spirit Guardians and get it all up on the first round. Clerics can't do that. We can. This makes us better in melee than those clerics. And we can also throw Smite on top of those attacks, which means we can do a lot more damage than pretty much any other character that you're going to be able to find at this level. So this is what our character looks like. Now, keep in mind, we technically still only have 1 attack around. Fighters, barbarians, rangers, even blade singers, valor bards, college of swords bards, they're all going to be attacking twice around now. But we have lots of ways to get a second attack in a round. We can use a spiritual weapon. We can use a quickened booming blade or a green flame blade. Plus, we have our Spirit Guardians that brings additional damage every round. So, technically speaking, we can have 3 sources of damage in a round. Furthermore, we can throw a Smite onto our main attack, plus it's getting additional Booming Blade or Green Flame Blade damage. There's a lot of damage here. Finally, we have a little bit of versatility. Although our spell slots are very valuable because those are Smite slots, plus they're important spells that increase our abilities in combat, things like Fireball do give us some versatility. Fireball at 7th level is still a good spell. Casting it at long range, hitting tons of enemies, doing lots of damage to great numbers of enemies, can deliver a lot more damage than a single target, especially if we're fighting a lot of enemies at once. Although we are technically speaking only a 5th level sorcerer, we do have spell slots of a 6th level character because those paladin levels are adding in as well. Remember too, we can use our Aasimar ability, that Necrotic Shroud, that will give us an additional 7 points of damage around. So we're doing damage from Necrotic Shroud, we're doing damage from Booming Blade, we're doing our base Greatsword damage, we're doing damage from maybe a spiritual weapon, we're doing damage from a Spirit Guardians, we're doing damage from a Smite. We can throw those all into the same round with a little bit of setup. That's a ton of damage. Here, let me just list that for you. Okay, so now that we have Spirit Guardians, this is a good time for us to go back to Paladin. I still want to get that second attack in a round. Booming Blade, Green Flame Blade, they've certainly offset not being able to attack twice in a round. That doesn't mean I don't want that second attack. Also, there's some nice things with Paladin that we can get moving up in levels. Ideally here, I'm looking at level 6 or 7 as the prime spot for number of Paladin. It really depends on the kind of Paladin you're going to play. Now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going for 7 levels of Paladin with this build. 7 levels of Paladin with Sorcerer with this mix is fantastic. You're going to see. So we're going to jump 2 levels at a time here. I'm going to go to level 4 in Paladin first. We're going to begin with our Sacred Oath. This is really about synergy, and with this character, the one we definitely want is Oath of Conquest. Now, you've already probably guessed this is not necessarily going to be a nice character. We're a fallen Azamar. We didn't take the good affinity with our divine soul, and now we're taking the Sacred Oath Conquest. This is an anti-hero character, or if you're playing in an evil campaign, this is a good choice for that too. One way or the other, this character isn't a lawful good. This is not your mommy's paladin. We're also going to get another ability score improvement. Again, there are some options here. There are feats here that are good choices. We haven't really mitigated our ability to maintain our concentration. So things like Warcaster are a possibility. Things like Lucky are a possibility. Even Resilient Constitution is a possibility. Certainly at some point we want to take all those things. Now, a lot of the damage that this character is doing doesn't rely on concentration. The Booming Blade or the Green Flame Blade does not rely on concentration. Doing smites doesn't rely on concentration. Even if we're doing smite spells, we're using concentration, but usually that concentration doesn't last long enough that we would need to make any saves. The only thing we're really ever going to be using it for is for Spirit Guardians, which is just one spell. So honestly, I don't think it's worth it to be taking feats right now just to mitigate concentration saves. Better for us to just increase our offense. Best way for us to increase our offense is to keep increasing our strength. So I'm going to go ahead and choose to increase our strength right now. There is a reason why we might want to choose Charisma. Charisma, of course, is going to increase our DC on our Spirit Guardians. If we're still using Spiritual Weapon, which we might some of the time, Spiritual Weapon isn't something I would necessarily be casting all the time at this level. But if I'm using Spiritual Weapon, of course, it would affect the hit and damage with that as well. But most of my damage is still coming from my attacks. And that's only going to become more so next level once we get our second attack. And those are going to rely on strength to hit. We get some very nice spells with the Conquest Paladin. Armor of Agathis in particular is a terrific spell for us to get. It increases our defense and our offense. Protective magical force surrounds us, manifesting as spectral frost that covers you and your gear. Lasts for an hour. Does not use concentration. You gain 5 temporary hit points for the duration. If a creature hits you with a melee attack, while you have these hit points, the creature takes 5 cold damage, but it scales. So at second level or higher, both the temporary hit points and the cold damage increase by 5 for each slot. So for every level of spell you cast that at, you can expect to do 5 points of damage to enemies and reduce damage to yourself by 5 points. Now we're getting one more Paladin first level spell. There's not a lot of good options here, to be honest. Again, we can't use rituals. I'm going to take protection from evil and good because in the right circumstances, it's decent. It's circumstantial, but circumstantial spells are fine. All our bases are covered here. So this just gives us one more option in that case where we're fighting undead or fiends and we want to increase our protection. Now I'm going to jump by 2 levels again. We're going to take this Paladin to level 6. This is a big level for us. We're going to get a lot of things at levels 5 and 6. Number 1, remember our Lay on Hands feature is increasing with each level. So at level 6, we're at 30 hit points. Remember, we can use 5 points to heal other things as well. Now, we also have our Channel Divinity. We got this at 3rd level. I forgot to go over it. I'll go over it now. We're going to get 2 things, Conquering Presence and Guided Strike. The Conquering Presence is another fear ability. So we use our Channel Divinity to exude a terrifying presence. As an action, you force each creature of your choice that you can see within 30 feet of you to make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, the creature becomes frightened of you for 1 minute. Frightened creature can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on itself with a success. We also get our Guided Strike, so we can use the Channel Divinity to strike with supernatural accuracy. When you make an attack roll, you can use your Channel Divinity to get a plus 10 bonus to the roll. So keep in mind, too, we also have Favor to the Gods. So if we're missing in combat, we have multiple ways. If you think you missed by a bit, Channel Divinity is not your option. You want to use your Favor to the Gods. If you fail by a lot, then Guided Strike, that's plus 10. That's going to turn almost any miss into a hit. Big deal here, extra attack. Beginning of 5th level, we can attack twice instead of once whenever we take the attack action on our turn. And the Aura of Protection is a big deal. Starting at 6th level, whenever you or a friendly creature within 10 feet of you must make a saving throw, creature gains a bonus of the saving throw equal to your Charisma modifier. We have a plus 3 Charisma modifier, so that's plus 3 to all saves to ourselves and our allies. Remember, this includes our concentration saves, so now our concentration saves are going to be made at plus 5. In addition, we can use things like Favor the Gods to boost that concentration save if we need to. We're going to get to choose a second level Paladin spell. Is there any question? I'm going to take Find Steed. Find Steed, of course, it's going to increase my maneuverability in combat, and because when I cast a spell on myself, it also affects my steed, that means I can combine it with things like Misty Step, where I'm going to cast Misty Step on myself to move 30 feet. The steed is going to move right with me. If we look at our character sheet now, at 11th level, we're looking at 82 hit points, which is okay. One thing about this build is it's not a hit point build. Hit points are good for Paladin, not good for Sorcerer, so you kind of mix them and get in the middle of the bag. Armor class is showing 18 here. That would be with non-magical plate mail. Level 11, there's a good chance you have other things going beyond that. Remember, we can throw a shield on there as well, so we can jump that up by 5 at a need as well. We have a reasonable amount of spells now. Remember, we're combining half our Paladin levels, which means 3 to our sorcerer levels of 5. So we're basically casting as an 8th level full cast character. That means we have 4 first level slots, 3 second level slots, 3 third level slots, 2 4th level slots. Now I don't have any 4th level spells, but that's okay because I can cast spells that scale well. Armor of Agathis, for example, scales quite well. Spirit Guardians scales absolutely terrifically, and that's probably what I'm going to use at least 1 4th level slot for. And remember, one other option, I can just smite with the 4th level spell, and if I hit with a critical and then I smite with a 4th level spell, that's 10d8 damage I'm adding. So that is going to be 45 damage on average radiant added to one attack. We now can attack twice around. That's usually what we're going to want to do, but keep in mind, Booming Blade and Green Flame Blade scaled at this level. We're at 11th level. So now Booming Blade would add an additional 2d8 to the base attack, or 3d8 more if they move. So potentially up to 5d8 more. And a Green Flame Blade, of course, if somebody's adjacent, they'll take an additional 2d8 plus your charisma modifier. So 2d8 plus 3, which is decent damage. In most cases, I like the idea of being able to attack twice. That means I can potentially do 2 smites, or if I have something like a Divine Favor going, it's another Divine Favor. If I have a magic weapon, which I probably do, I'm 11th level, certainly I've got a magic weapon. That damage isn't going again and again. We're also doing our base weapon damage again and again. We're doing our strength again and again. This all adds up to probably more than we're going to get from those cantrips, but those cantrips at least give us an option. So I'm just going to throw up here. This is the kind of damage we could expect to do if we're going to use some resources. If we're attacking once around with a Booming Blade or a Green Flame Blade, in this case, we're going to assume it's a Booming Blade, and we're going to assume that we are attacking a creature that is going to move on that round. Here is the damage you could expect to do with 2 attacks. Remember, this is going to use more resources because we got an additional smite to throw up on there. But we have the option to throw that additional smite, and that matters. So that's the kind of damage we could expect to do that way. So choose your poison. I'm just going to level up once here because this is a huge level for us. Level 7, and this is the reason we took the Conquest Paladin. If you're only going to take 6 levels, or even if you're only going to take 3 levels, the Vengeance Paladin becomes a pretty good choice. You get that ability to get advantage on all your attacks. You get the Misty Step spell included with that spell. You can get Hunter's Mark, which is a nice spell for increasing damage. But Oath of Conquest, if we take our 7th level, along with the race we've chosen, along with the smite spells we've chosen, it becomes really amazing. Aura of Conquest. Starting at 7th level, you constantly emanate a menacing aura while you're not incapacitated. The aura extends 10 feet from you in every direction, though not through total cover. If a creature is frightened of you, its speed is reduced to 0 while in the aura. That's really what it's all about. And that creature takes psychic damage equal to half your Paladin level if it starts its turn there. At 18th level, doesn't matter, we're not going to get to 18th level. So, when we use our Azamar ability, that is going to synergize with Aura of Conquest. So we're going to use that so that we get our increase to damage on every attack, plus all the creatures are going to make their saving throws or be frightened. If they're frightened, they can't run away. And now they're stuck. And they can't get any closer to you either. So they really just can't move at all. If they're 10 feet from you, they're just screwed, right? And you can just move in when you feel like it. Take out enemies one at a time. If they make their saving throw from that, we have a lot of other ways to frighten them again. We have a smite spell that can frighten them. We have a conquest paladin ability that can frighten them. So many options to frighten mass numbers of enemies. And then if they are within 10 feet of us, we just really wreck them. In addition, of course, they're taking additional damage on top of all of that. It's terrible. And it's very, very mean. And control-wise, we've now turned this glass cannon into a lockdown build. So we're now doing massive damage on top of lockdown. That's a huge combination. Usually when you make a lockdown character, you give up offense. Not in this case. In this case, this is all about offense, and then the lockdown is just a bonus. So that takes us to 12th level. Now, from 12th through 20th, we're just going to go straight sorcerer all the way through. This is going to give us the most number of spells and the most number of spell slots, because we've gotten all the big stuff we're going to get from Paladin. Now, all we want to do is get more and better spells, more meta magic, so that we can do more quickened booming blades or green flame blades, or we can throw a quickened spirit guardians onto every fight. And then from there are the more powerful spells that come on the sorcerer list, which isn't the best list in the game. The best list in the game is the wizard, but sorcerer gets many of the best spells on the wizard list. In addition, of course, we have cleric spells as well, though we really access the best of the cleric spells. So I'm going to jump this character right to level 8 as a sorcerer. So now we're a 15th level character. Now it's interesting, at this point my character is going to have 6th level spell slots, but he will only be able to cast 4th level spells. But I will cast Spirit Guardians with a 6th level slot. That doesn't bother me. Spirit Guardians scale so well, and when you're playing a character that's all about doing damage in melee, Spirit Guardians is huge. Keep in mind that this is a character that can freeze the enemies in place. And if you get that Spirit Guardians going, they can't get out, right? So they're just going to take that damage round after round. It's awful for them. And even if they make their saving throw, then they have to get out of the range. And of course, it's difficult terrain in a Spirit Guardians. This all works together so nicely. Spirit Guardians with Oath of Conquest, with our Asmar frightening ability. All these things work together so well to increase our damage, increase our lockdown ability, increase our battlefield control, and just wreck our enemies. This is why I call this the ultimate Spellblade. This character really doesn't just deliver damage, it delivers damage amazingly, plus the versatility of spell casting, plus the lockdown. Plus, we're just tearing mass numbers of enemies every round. We have damage coming from so many different sources. Now, people aren't going to believe I did this, but I am going to take Banishment. Banishment is perfect for this character because Banishment, of course, scales well. And because we are looking for spells that scale well right now. When we cast this spell using a spell slot at 5th level or higher, you can target one additional creature for each slot above 4th. We have 6th level spell slots. So Banishment just became a mass debuff. That makes it really good and a good choice. I've always said Banishment's a good spell. My problem is single target spells where if they make their save, nothing happens. This is not a single target spell because I'm never going to be casting it with a 4th level slot. I'm going to be casting it with a 5th or 6th level slot, which means it is a multi-character spell, which means multiple saves have to fail for nothing to happen. The next spell I'm going to choose is Greater Invisibility. Now this, I have to make a decision here. Am I going to do Greater Invisibility or am I going to do Spirit Guardians? Most of the time I'm going to do Spirit Guardians. Spirit Guardians is so much more damage, but Greater Invisibility, of course, increases my defense and my offense, right? Because we're giving disadvantage to attacks against us and we are getting advantage on our attacks. And we still have lots of other methods of doing damage. We're attacking twice a round. We can quicken things like our booming blade or a green flame blade that aren't going to require a concentration. And we still have our smites, and Greater Invisibility is giving us advantage. Advantage increases our chance of criticals. Criticals, of course, can be doubling our smite damage. So there's so much going on here that this still becomes a good choice. Mainly, again, if it's just offense I'm concerned about, Spirit Guardians is better. But if I'm getting low on hit points or I'm concerned about being hit, greater invisibility gives me a nice combination of offense and defense. The last spell I'm going to take, I'm considering Polymorph because Polymorph isn't a very good buff at 15th level. It's not a great buff, but it's still a way if somebody's got just a handful of hit points left and they're about to go down, you can still bring them up to a Giant Ape that's still got a fair number of hit points. At this level, it's still a fair number of hit points. We can also twin it, so then we could help an ally and still potentially screw an enemy. So it is a decent choice. The one I'm going to choose, however, is Death Ward. Again, Polymorph isn't quite as good anymore at this level. Death Ward is still really good. Death Ward, here's what Death Ward does. It's a 1-action touch, 8-hour duration. You touch a creature and grant a measure of protection from death. The first time a target would drop to 0 hit points as a result of taking damage. The target instead drops to 1 hit point and the spell ends. So this is something I'm going to cast on myself. And of course, it's going to affect my Fine Steed as well. This is also single target. This means I can twin it. So we're going to jump another 3 levels, take this sorcerer up to level 11. Remember, this is now an 18th level character. So if we were going up against a wizard, that wizard would have Wish. This character really kind of peaked already. This character was amazing around level 12. Level 12 is kind of the level for this character, and that's common with Gishes. That levels 9 through 12, we saw that with Jack of all trades as well. We're seeing it here as well. Although our sorcerer abilities are increasing with level, because we can't get to 9th level spells with this build, this isn't as strong a 20th level character as some straight casters would be. By the way, not as strong as a straight Valabar would be. But if you want a character that does lots of damage, this is still doing tons of damage. So we're going to choose some more class features. We get more meta magic choice. Now remember, because Quicken Spell is so important for this particular character, we're probably using most of those meta magic points right away. But we do get one more option. And I'm liking Empowered. Empowered is cheap. We can combine it with other meta magic. It allows us to reroll damage. Some of the things we're doing are doing a lot of damage dice. If we're doing something like Booming Blade, we can use this to reroll a lot of different dice. So it's still a pretty good choice at this level. And sometimes we're just going to have like a point or two left. We just want to use them up. And this is a good way to do that. Now we get an ability score increase. Again, we could choose a feat right now that's going to mitigate our concentration saves, but you know what else will increase our concentration saves? Increasing our charisma, because charisma, of course, increases our saving throws, and in addition to our allies' saving throws, and one of those saving throws is concentration. So by increasing our charisma, we are improving our concentration. We're also relying more and more on charisma as a way of dealing damage in combat, and that's what we do. So we're now going to choose yet another cantrip. This run really doesn't matter. We're not using cantrips beyond Booming Blade and Green Flame Blade very much anymore. And even Booming Blade and Green Flame Blade, we're only ever really using if we're going to quicken them. Most of the time, we're going to take our second attack. So go ahead and take whatever you want. I like Mending, so I'll take the Mending cantrip. Looking at our 5th level spells, there's only one I'm really interested in taking. That's Greater Restoration. One of those spells that normally you don't need, but when you do need it, there's nothing else that'll work for you. That takes us to our level 6 spells, and there's 2 options here I really like. Number 1 is Heal. Heal is a great spell. Heals 70 hit points damage, and in 1 action, that's a lot of healing in 1 quick action. The second one I really like at this level is Mass Suggestion. Mass Suggestion I've talked about multiple times before. It's a really obvious choice at this point in the game when you can take that level of spell. So looking at our character, the saving throws of this character are quite good, right? Because we are getting +4 on all saving throws. That's going to be +5 very soon, in fact, in 1 level. And we have now a lot of spell slots. In addition, we have spell slots, of course, that we don't have spells for. We have a 7th level slot. We don't have a 7th level spell. Now, we might use it for a heal in a pinch, but you know what? I'll still use it as a Spirit Guardian spell. Spirit Guardian scales so well that even at 7th level, that's still providing so much damage every round to so many different creatures, especially if we can frighten them and freeze them in place. That can just lead to tons of damage. So I still like it for that level. So Spirit Guardians is one of those spells that I'll keep scaling it. It's nice to have that spell then, because that means because we're playing a character that's going to have spell slots that are higher than spells we have, at least we have a spell that always scales amazingly and delivers exactly what this character should be doing. So there are just 2 more levels to go to 20th level. There's really 2 different ways you could play this. I could take 2 more levels of Sorcerer. That give me 13th level in Sorcerer, and that is going to give me a 7th level spell. There's no 7th level spell that is just jumping out at me. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase each by 1 level. Paladin up to level 8, Sorcerer up to level 12. That's going to give me 2 ability score increases, which I think really pays off here because I'm not actually even losing any spell casting. I'm going to get the same number of spell casting slots that I would have had if I had taken 2 levels of Sorcerer, because now I'm getting 4 levels of multi-class synergy from Paladin instead of 3. So first with Paladin, my ability score improvement, I'm going to go ahead and increase my charisma again. Now both my strength and my charisma are giving me the +5 bonus. And with Sorcerer, I'm going to take something that I've wanted for many, many levels, but haven't been able to take until now. I'm going to take Great Weapon Master, because this is a character that can use Channel Divinity to turn misses into hits. They can use Favor of the Gods, turn misses into hits. They can provide themselves advantage through things like greater invisibility. They can do extra attacks through things like using a quickened spell to cast a booming blade or a green flame blade. Great Weapon Master has become very potent with this character. I just couldn't take it before because I needed those increases to strength and to charisma, because those are affecting my damage significantly. And if I take this instead, it could be in a situation where I'm going to be missing too much to make proper advantage of this. Now that I've got my strength at 20, my charisma's at 20, it's the right time for this. Remember too, if I drop somebody, I can use a bonus action to make another attack as well. Give me yet another bonus action opportunity. I get 3 more Paladin spells. I'm going to take Aid because Aid is a spell that scales very well. I'm looking for spells that scale very well. It's also a good spell. And the other spells here aren't doing much for me, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm taking Lesser Restoration, Zone of Truth, both circumstantial. Probably not going to use either of those very much. And level 12 is one of those levels with a primary spellcaster where you aren't getting any additional spells. So with a sorcerer, there's nothing to look at. So here's our ultimate Spellblade right at level 20. Remember, this character kind of peaked at level 12. Level 12 was huge, right? The level where our Oath of Conquest brings us the ability to freeze our frightened enemies, because we have so many ways to frighten our enemies. But this is still a strong character at level 20. This is a character that does an amazing amount of damage round after round, has spell options, a number of them. We're not getting into the 9th level spells with this character as we did with our Jack of all Trades character, though we could have gone the other way with our Jack of all Trades character. We could have gone with more Warlock. In this case, I went with the more Paladin. We didn't have to. We could go Paladin 2, Sorcerer 18, get 9th level spells, and at this level, this character would be more powerful with that mix. But at 12th level, this character was way more powerful with this mix. So think about that when you are making your character. Where do you expect the majority of your campaign to be? It's going to be at very, very high levels, the mid levels, the lower levels. If it's going to be a lot of time in that 20th level range, in that 15th to 20th level range, maybe you want to go Paladin 2 and then Sorcerer all the way with the rest. But if you're going to be spending more time in those mid levels, and then most campaigns do, then I think this is the way to go with that build. So that's it. That's the ultimate Spellblade. This is as potent I can make a character offensively using a Gish build. Now, technically speaking, you can make fighters that can do the damage that is going to be very relative to what this character can do. Some cases even higher than this character can do. But those are fighters. They don't have all the spell casting options that this character has. They don't have all the saving throw bonuses that this character has. This character has its worst save at +4. Plus it's providing +5 to saves to everyone around it. It has all those spells. And it can really Nova the damage when it needs to Nova it. So there's not much more to say. As far as Gishes go, this is the ultimate I can bring offensively. I'm going to sit back and relax. I'm going to have some fun because D&D is for everyone. See you guys next time.